Alright, we're going to talk about 7.6, which is percent of increase and decrease. So we're going to use proportions to solve this. It's very similar to our other ones. Our setup is just slightly different. Okay, so you know how our typical setup for proportions for percent problems is percent over 100 equals the part over the whole. It's going to be similar to that, but slightly different. So now instead of percent, we're actually looking for a percent change, right? And either an increase or a decrease. It doesn't really matter which one, but you're looking for a percent change over 100, okay? So instead of a part and whole, we want to have the amount it changed it, whatever is changing. So let's say the price of a shirt goes down, that's a decrease. So how much did it go down by? Or the price of a car goes up, how much did it go up by? So that's the amount changed, okay? And it's across from the percent change because they're both talking about how much it changed. This is the actual amount it changed, like the physical number, like it went up $5. And this is the percent it changed, so converting it to a percent. On the bottom is the original amount. So whatever it was first, that is your 100%. Because we're comparing the amount it changed to the original amount with the percentage. Percent change to the 100%. Okay, so this is our setup for our proportion when we're doing a percent change. Okay, now how do you know when to use this and when to use this? Well, if it's a normal percent problem, this is what you're doing. The only time you would use this if it mentions some keywords. Obviously, change, how much it changed. Okay. If it mentions something increasing or decreasing, or any word that kind of means the same thing as that, right? If they're talking about the price of gas going up and they want to see what was the percent change. If they talk about the price of a meal at a restaurant going down, and they want to know the percent decrease, that would be it, okay? So if they mention anything about the percent changing, percent change, percent increase, percent decrease, this is what you're doing, okay? Otherwise, you're still doing that, so don't get confused. So be sure to note when you're using this. These are the keywords you're looking for, and obviously anything that is similar to increase or decrease, like going up or going down. All right, so now that we know when we're using this, let's look at some example problems. All right, so I'm going to grab my book. I'm going to look at the first problem here. So it says the selling price of a bicycle that had sold for $220 last year was increased by 15%. What is the new price? All right, so remember, let me pull up my proportion again. So I'm going to have percent change over 100 equals the amount it changed over the original amount. Okay, and the key here is the amount change. Sometimes you have to subtract to find that. They don't always necessarily tell you. Sometimes they'll tell you the old price and the new price and you need to subtract, but not the case in this one. So this one, the selling price of a bicycle that had sold for $220 last year was increased by 15%. What is the new price? So there's our keyword there. It increased 15%. That's why I know I'm doing percent change and not my normal percent. So I have my percent, so it's 15. How much it changed by over 100. The other number they gave me was 220, which was the price last year, and they want to know what's the new price. So that means we have the old price right there. So 220, get that out of the way. 220 is the original amount. Now, looking at this problem again, notice that they're asking for the new price. Okay, what is the new price? Common mistake when I'm defining my variable, because this is a word problem. People will say this is the new price. But is X the new price? Look at this up here. That doesn't say new amount, right? Like original amounts down here, that doesn't say new amount. It says the amount it changed. So my X right now is not the new price. My X is how much the cost is going up. So amount, cost, so I'll do money, bike, increases. Okay. So when I solve this, I'm not going to automatically have my answer. Right now I'm figuring out, well, how much did the bike go up? Okay. I'm going to do my normal cross multiplication. Use your calculator for the multiplication, otherwise it would take a little bit of time. Remember, when you are dividing by 100, shortcut is we can just knock off those two zeros, right? So x is going to be 33. So 33, again, not the new price of my bike. That doesn't make sense. The price went up. It was $220, so how could it go up to $33? It doesn't make sense. That'd be going down. Instead, that's the amount the bike increased. Okay, so to answer my question, what do I need to do? I need to take the original amount, 220, and add the amount it increased to get my new price of my bike is $253. Okay, so that's the tricky part about these. You've got to think and think what is going on. What is what, okay? That's the amount that's going up or down. That's the original amount. If you're ever looking for the new amount, you're either going to have to add. In this case, I added because the price was increasing, or subtract. If the price decreased, obviously I would subtract and make it less. All right, so let's practice another one. All right, zoom in slightly. All right, so the membership in the Fair Oaks Chess Club increased from 256 to 288. What is the percent of increase? All right, so if you think you can do this, go ahead and pause it and try it on your own, and then I'll show you how to do it. If you're confused, you can just go ahead and watch it, and I'll take you through it. All right, so we have the original amount. Original is what happened first, so the original was 256. Set this out of the way. So original amount, let's go ahead and replace that, 256. Common mistake people do is they'll just put the smaller number on top and the larger number on bottom. Do not do that. You got to see what happened first. So what happened first was 256. This is the amount it changed by. Do we know how much it changed by? No, but we can't figure it out. How would we figure it out? Well, it ended up at 288. It was 256, so subtract. 288 minus 256 is 32. So that means the membership increased 32 people. It went from 256 to 288. So it increased 32 people. So that's the actual amount it changed. So whenever you're given an old amount and a new amount, you're going to have to subtract to find out how much it changed by. We want to find the percent change, so this is our x. So defining our variable is pretty easy this time. X equals percent increase. All right, and at this point, I'm just going to do my cross multiplying. Let's zoom out a little bit. There we go. So my cross multiplying, do my reciprocal. We find out the percent increase once I type it into my calculator is 12.5. And since I'm using proportions, that's already my percent. So 12.5% is the amount that the chess club attendance increased by. All right, let's try another one. So the tricky part about these ones is there's just a lot of pieces, and it's figuring out what piece goes where. Sometimes you have to subtract, sometimes you have to add later, subtract later, all sorts of things. So there's a lot of moving parts here. All right, so let's look at number 5. So it says the fuel economy in the new Desert Rat 2000 compact wagon. So really long name for a car, right? But they're trying to confuse you, give you some numbers, but whatever, that doesn't matter. Is advertised to be 24% increase over the old model. If the new model gets 31 miles per gallon, what was the fuel economy of the old model? Okay, so this is a very tricky one. So let's look at this one, okay? If you think you can try it on your own, go ahead and pause and try it. Otherwise, I'll take you through this one. All right, so let's look at our setup again. It's percent change over 100 equals the amount it changed over the original amount. Okay, so what do we know? So it says 24% increase over the old model. So we know the percent change is 24. They also tell us the new model gets 31 miles per gallon. Well, the new model is not the amount changed, and it's also not the original amount. So right now we don't know either of those. So 31 can't go in either of those slots. They want to know what was the fuel economy of the old model. So they want to know the old model, the original amount. So this is our X. Okay. So X is original fuel economy. All right, we know the new fuel economy is 31 miles per gallon. So let's think of an example, okay? How do we do this? Because right now I still need to figure out, well, what am I going to put in this amount changed right here? That's my big question mark of what am I doing, okay? So it went from the original amount was X to a new amount was 31, right? That's what's happening here. We don't know what the old one is. We do know the new one's 31. We also don't know how much it changed. But using this, could I figure that out? Yes, right? Because let's say it was 10, hypothetically. I'm totally making that up. And it went to 31. Well, then how much did it change? 21. You subtracted, right? So instead of a question mark here, I could write this as 31 minus X is how much it changed. Okay? Because it went from X to 31. So to figure out how much it changed, I need to subtract those. Just like if it had gone from 10 to 31, I would have done 31 minus 10 is 21. Okay? So the amount it changed is 31 minus X. That is what I'm putting right there. I know this is very confusing because it's challenging. You have two X's in there. How do you know how to put them both in? We'll keep working on these and we'll practice some more in class as well. But the more you practice it, the better you'll get it down. Okay? The main thing with all of these problems is organize your information, think out what is happening in this situation so you can figure out what goes where. All right, so once we've set that up, now I can solve it. Okay, so I'm going to do my cross products. So this has two terms, so I need to do that 100 outside parentheses. I'm going to distribute. All right, at this point, I have an X on both sides. So remember the way you deal with that is you add the opposite of one of them. I'm going to pick the 100, the negative 100X to add a positive 100 because that gets my X's isolated away from this other number. So I have 124X equals 3100. Do the reciprocal. Now go ahead and divide that out. And I get 25. So that makes sense because, remember the original problem, it said the fuel economy in that random name car is advertised to be 24% increase over the old model. The new one is 31 miles per gallon. What is the old one? So the old one being 25 makes sense. It went from 25 to 31. That's a reasonable increase. So I would keep 25. Remember my units was miles per gallon, which you can abbreviate as miles per gallon. All right, so let's try another one because these can be pretty tricky to set out. All right, this next one is just like that last one. So number 7, the calorie count of a container of Seaside cottage cheese was reduced, so this time it's going down, by 8% to 414 calories. What was the old calorie count? This is going to be set up a lot like the last one, so go ahead and pause it and try to set it up on your own, and then hit play to figure out how to do it. All right, so we have our percent decrease is 8. Let's go write the 8. 8 over 100. We're looking for the old calorie count, so we're looking for the original amount. So original calories. Again, I don't know how much it changed by. I know that it went from X, which was the original amount. Where am I here? To 414 calories. Okay. Now, this time it's decreasing. Okay. So, whatever X was is more than 414 because it was a decrease. So, let's say it was 420, just a hypothetical 420. How much did it increase by? It went from 420 to 414. So you would have done 420 minus 414 to get 6. Okay. I like these hypotheticals because it helps you figure out what you're subtracting from what. Because this time, instead of doing that minus that, I'm going to do X minus 414, just like I did 420 minus 414. The key here is to notice, was it an increase or a decrease? Since it was a decrease, my first original amount here, my x, is bigger. So that's why my hypothetical that I just totally made up based off nothing is bigger than that one, okay? To see that, okay, I would do 420 minus 414 to get that amount it changed by. So I do my x minus my 414. So that's how I get my amount changed. If you flip-flop this, that's totally understandable because on the last one it was the other way around. The reason it was the other way around last time was because it was an increase. So the later value was larger. Okay? So that's the tricky part. I think doing those hypotheticals that I keep showing you make it really a lot easier to figure out what goes right there. Once we have all that, obviously now the cross multiplying is the easier part than setting it up. So go ahead and cross multiply, then distribute. Then add the opposite. And we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. We'll get our original calorie count. Handy calculator. And we find out the original amount was 450 calories. Very reasonable, right? 414 was our original calorie, or sorry, our after the decreased calories, so our original calories was 450 before the decrease. Makes sense. So 450 calories. I'm telling you, the more you practice this, the easier this is going to become. Okay? Well, let's do another one. The more we practice, the better it's going to go. Alright, so this one's a little trickier. It says last year the population of Spoon Forks grew from 12,050 to 1,300. Sorry, 1,250 to 1,300. If the population of the new town grows by the same, or sorry, can't read today. The population of the town grows by the same percent this year, what will the population be? Okay, so this is actually a two-part question. Let's focus on just part one because I'm not going to give you ones this complicated on a quiz or a test. It's going to be the basic part, okay? So this one is asking, basically, find out what the percent increase was. It went from 1,250 to 1,300. So go ahead and pause it and try to find the percent increase if it's going from 1,250 to 1,300, okay? All right, so this one is actually a lot easier than the last one we did. We're looking for the percent it's increasing. We want the original amount down here. So originally it was 1,250. Remember, don't automatically put the bigger one down there because that's when you'll make mistakes. And then we want the amount it changed up here. So if it's going from 1,250 to 1,300, that's going up by 50 people. Okay, so we're looking for percent increase. So this is a lot more straightforward than the last couple ones we did. So let's take a look at this. Do our cross multiplying. Do our division. And we get that it was a 4% increase. Makes sense because it went up 50 people out of 1,000, so it's not a drastic increase. So fairly straightforward. Now if you were going to answer the question that this was asking, it said if the population of the town grows by the same percent this year, what will the population be? So this is now a new problem. So we have our 4%. So basically a 4% increase of what number? Well, last year it went from 1,250 to 1,300. But now we're talking about this year. So this year we're starting at 1,300. So 1,300 is our new original amount. I know that seems weird, new original. But we're talking about just this year. So at the beginning of this year, it started at 1,300. So now they want to know how many people now. So if it's a 4% increase of 1,300, what's the new amount? So go ahead and pause it and try to figure out what is the new population if it's a 4% increase of 1,300. All right, so we have our percent increase. We have our original amount. X is not going to be the new amount. Remember, X is not the new amount. X is the amount, the population increased. Do our cross multiplying. Okay, 2. Knock off those 2 zeros. And we get that it grew by 52 people this year. Okay, so 52 people is how much it increased by, but that's not what it's asking. It's asking what is the new population. So if we were at 1,300, it increases by 52 people. Our new population would be 1,352 people. All right, so this is definitely trickier than our old percent because you're talking about things increasing, decreasing. The biggest thing you have to do is just think out what is all the information mean, okay? Figure out what was original, what is the new amount, how much did it change by, and then the percent, okay? The key is figuring out what information you have and what are you being asked. All right, we'll practice more